All right, what's happening, y'all? Show about Rico from Street Scores. Well, it's official. Rivera has already announced Taylor Heinecke will start versus the Houston Texans this upcoming Sunday. Now, technically, it kind of is a short week. Maybe that plays a little role in it. Of course, we got to talk about whether it's the right move to make. Should we stick with Heinecke with the hot hand, or should we go back to Carson Wentz if he's healthy enough? Also, we got to talk about, even with Heinecke named the starter, should Wentz be a backup? And not even just like health-wise and physically, if he can do it, but even just mentally, would that be a good idea? Also, big Chase Young update. Adam Schefter tweeted yesterday morning that Chase Young is expected to be activated this week to play Sunday in his first game since tearing his ACL and MCL in a game versus the Bucs last November. And then Ron Rivera clarified on the chances on how likely it is that Chase Young can actually make his season debut against the Texans as well. So we got to talk about that. And then, of course, we also got to talk about the practice report and injury report for the Commanders from today's practice, as in Wednesday, who didn't participate, who was limited, and who were full participants. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, make sure you pull up every Sunday, every Commanders game day, for the live play-by-play analysis stream where I break down everything that's going on play-by-play, giving y'all the down, giving y'all the yards to go, what's going on, formations, things like that. So make sure you pull up to laugh and learn with me every Commanders game, regular season, and I'm gonna speak it into existence postseason as well. And without further ado, let's get it. All right, so it's been officially announced Taylor Heinecke is the starter. No more controversy. I know over the past couple of days, I was actually going to work on a video to where if they didn't announce this till later in the week, I was going to probably put out a video tonight or tomorrow breaking down why Heinecke should start and why he shouldn't start. You know me, I'm objective. I'm going to give both sides. I'm going to give positive and negatives for Heinecke, positive and negatives for Carson Wentz, and I may have even thrown a little bit of Sam Howell in there, throw his name out there and see why it would be smart to start him and why it wouldn't be smart to start him, especially going to the draft. But I was going to make that a video, but now we'll just kind of put that into this video. So even though Heinecke is the starter, I'm going to talk about why it's smart for him to be the starter, but also maybe some of the negatives that he comes with that maybe Carson Wentz can make up for if he were the starter. But again, it's official. Heinecke is the starter. No more debate about that. The only debate is, was this the right move or not? Rivera said, quote, "They'll see how it goes," unquote, before determining if Carson Wentz could even be the backup this week. But he made it clear Wentz would need practice time before that could even happen. This is not a case of the coach declaring who was the long-term starter. Rivera said that there's a world where Wentz could be clear for activation later in the week and could be QB2, but we'll see. Because right now, Sam Howell is the backup, Heinecke is the starter, and even if Carson Wentz comes back healthy, is it even worth it? Is it worth risking him reaching that 70% of snaps threshold to turn a third-round pick we got to give the Colts into a second? And even just ignoring the whole trade details and all of that type of stuff, would it even be smart to throw Carson Wentz out there with the way the offense has been flowing? I mean, are you really going to stop feeding the hot hand? Like a video that I recorded before this one, but it's probably going to come out after this one because I felt like this was kind of breaking news. I'm gonna stop mid-editing of my stock up, stock down video. But I talked about this in my video, and I said that at this point with Heinecke, his ability to make people want to run through a wall for him and literally boosting everybody's stats +3 across the board and galvanizing the troops, at this point, this is a quantifiable trait. This is like a concrete trait that we can almost measure at this point. I mean, how consistent it's been and how Joey Sly's suddenly one of the best kickers in NFL history, at least in Washington Commanders history. The fact that Kendall Fuller's finally starting to ball out. A lot of things are finally starting to come together. And really the only major changes are William Jackson. But William Jackson's been benched for a while. We just now traded him a couple of weeks ago, but he's been benched since the Tennessee Titans game. Really the only big change has honestly been Taylor Heinecke. There hasn't been much else. I mean, Benjamin St-Juste, a lot of the players, Derek Forrest, are starting to come into themselves, and they're just getting better week by week. And Brian Robinson's getting healthier. He's playing stronger. And Scott Turner finally looked a little consistent. Offensive line playing slightly better, but not much better. the biggest change is Taylor Heinecke, honestly. So it's to a point that we kind of got to actually give him credit for this galvanizing the troops thing. Like, it actually really matters. This is a measurable trait that we can actually attribute to Taylor Heinecke that Carson Wentz just doesn't have. I think Sam Howell would have the exact same effect, and possibly even more, because he's a little bit more relatable in the locker room. I'm not going to dive into why and all of that. Y'all have seen Sam Howell, how he acts, how he talks, the music he listens to, and all of that. But still, Taylor Heinecke at this point is a proven leader of men, a proven galvanizer, a proven general that literally makes the guys around him play better offense, defense, and special teams. That was some of the best special teams coverage play I've seen from the Commanders, not only just this season, all year, but in the past couple of seasons. I don't know what it is. Now, Carson Wentz, his situation is interesting because, I mean, technically, he is eligible to return from injury, because when you go on temporary IR, you got to miss at least 4 weeks. So we're in that window to where, okay, if he's healthy, he can go. But, I mean, you saw when Ron Rivera wasn't even willing to announce that Taylor Heinecke was the starter last night and immediately after the Eagles win, you saw people coming to be Taylor Heineke's savior. I mean, left and right, RG3, Joe Theismann. Most people were like, nah, there's no way you start Carson Wentz. Barstool Nate said, quote, there's no way they can go back to Wentz right now, unquote. B. Mitch said, are you sitting down? Because for once, I agree with you. In a reply to Barstool Nate, Theismann just simply tweeted they should stay with Taylor, and that's it. Nothing else. Robert Griffin tweeted, I've been on the record saying Carson should be the guy when he gets back, but that's no longer the case. It's Taylor's job to lose for the rest of the season, unquote. And shouts out to Taylor Heinecke, because on the Pat McAfee show, he shows so much class. He said even if the team does go back to Carson Wentz, the starter, this week, he will show support and he will help them get ready in whatever way that he can. And of course, you had players coming to Taylor Heineke's rescue as well. Terry McLaurin talking about Taylor Heinecke said, quote, I think we rally around him. Honestly, the heart he plays with, I feel like he's infectious. I'm really happy to play with a guy like that who is gritty. You know what I mean? Is dirty, is nasty, unquote. They love this guy. You seen the footage in the locker room. You seen the footage on the plane. I mean, they love this guy. And just before we dive into like Taylor Heineke's future with the team, which I mean, we don't got to dive into too much, but I always like to make sure y'all keep it in the back of your minds constantly. Always going to bring the attention to certain things, even if it's not something that exactly matters yet. But beyond everything else, I mean, maybe you can argue that Carson Wentz is a better pocket passer. I mean, but even then, I trust Carson Wentz to make better deep ball throws, but I trust Taylor Heinecke to make the safe stuff more often and more consistently. I mean, if we need a 5-yard slant to be completed on time and with accuracy for a first down on like 3rd and 3, I trust Taylor Heinecke way more than Carson Wentz to make that throw. And then most importantly, in my opinion, the biggest reason why Taylor Heinecke makes more sense than Carson Wentz for this offense right now, first of all, just Scott Turner. I mean, just the way that Taylor Heinecke is able to use his legs, it opens up the offense, and we're able to actually hit deep down the field. I mean, the reason we wanted Carson Wentz to work out was because he can hit deep bombs. Taylor Heineke's not a better deep ball thrower yet, but he's improved in the play action off of the dominant run game that Taylor Heineke's a part of. Taylor Heineke's legs are a part of the run game that opens things up down the field when safeties and linebackers have to play up to stop the run. So even though he's not the best deep ball thrower, we're getting the occasional deep ball in there now. And Taylor Heinecke is a big reason for that with his use of his legs and being a part of the run game as well, along with the running backs and other guys like that. But mostly, the way this offensive line has been, again, they played better against the Eagles, you could say, but they weren't great. I mean, Taylor Heinecke made something out of nothing quite a bit, being able to dodge would-be sacks and would-be pressures and things like that. Carson Wentz is a statue this year. I don't know why. With the Colts last year, even though he didn't sustain any crazy leg injuries, for some reason, last year with the Colts, he was mobile. This year with us, I don't know what happened on the plane, but he lost all his mobility. I'll never forget that read option we ran with Carson Wentz against the Bears. That was terrible. Shouts out to him for that hit he put on my Georgia Bulldog, Roquan Smith, but like, man, he has no mobility right now. He has heart, but he doesn't have mobility. And it's just this Taylor Heineke's use of legs opens up this offense, and most importantly, with this offensive line dealing with so many injuries, we still technically are on to our 4th starting center. We're still technically to our backup right tackle. Andrew Norwell and Trey Turner are still like, I would prefer to have Wes Schweitzer out there, but he's hurt. You know, and Charles Leno, our most consistent offensive lineman, gave up a strip sack the first possession of the game. This offensive line played better, but they haven't played very well yet, in my opinion, at any point this season. And so we need a guy with Taylor Heinicke's mobility to make up for that and to keep this offense going, even with the offensive line struggling and being inconsistent. So, hey, man, Taylor Heinecke just makes the most sense. But the thing I wanted to bring to y'all attention, and to keep it in the back of y'all minds, remember, Taylor Heinicke's contract ends after this season. So what are we thinking? Are we thinking like a 2-3 year, maybe $7 mil to $10 mil a year? Like, I mean, are we going to do that for a backup, supposedly? Because I don't think we're just going to assume he's a starter going into next season. He still has his limits. I love Taylor Heinicke. Again, as a fellow Atlanta native, I want him to be a Hall of Famer if he could be. But objectively, watching him on the field and watching the things he does, he's not. And I don't think he'll ever be that ceiling raiser. But I do really want him to be as great as possible. But at the same time, just going back and forth with the good side and with my good shoulder and my bad shoulder, the devil and the angel, at the same time, man, he's just not a long-term answer. And maybe Sam Howell is, or maybe we draft a quarterback, trade up in the draft to get a guy like a Bryce Young or something. Who knows? Maybe we just ride off with Taylor Heinicke for another season, and then we draft our guy the 2024 draft. Who knows, man? Sam Howell, again, is still part of the equation, but, like, how much are we going to pay Taylor Heinicke at the end of this season? Say we get to the playoffs, say he even wins a playoff game. I'm pretty sure that bag is going to be crazy. But you got to remember, man, outside of this Eagles game, you can easily argue we've been winning in spite of Taylor Heinicke. The Colts game, last 5 minutes, amazing, super clutch. But Taylor Heinicke was so bad, we should have never been in that situation in the first place, where we got to go score all of those points in the last 5 minutes. We only had 7 points till 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter against the Colts. The Green Bay game, he was trying to sell at times. The Vikings game, he kind of did technically sell. I mean, that's not all his fault, but he was one of the main reasons. And then he almost did it against the Eagles. He just has this knack for fourth quarter leads 2 weeks in a row against really good top NFC teams, leading the fourth quarter, throwing a game-losing interception, just trying to sell the game. And we can't have that, because you're not good enough in the first 3 quarters to have a sell like that in the fourth quarter, and we can make up for it. So thank goodness he did. I mean, honestly, this Eagles game was probably his most complete game of his career. I'm not just saying his best, I'm saying most complete. As far as being consistent throughout a whole 4-quarter game, this was probably his most complete, at the very least, this season. So I want to give him his credit, but at the same time, we have been winning in spite of this guy for the most part. Because even over the course of these 5 games that he's played, going 4-1, which is great, but it's kind of the Jimmy G argument. If you put Justin Fields how he's playing currently with the 49ers, they're Super Bowl favorites easily. At the very least, a top 3 team. Jimmy G is the reason why, even though Jimmy G's a winner and the 49ers always win when Jimmy G's at quarterback, he's the reason nobody's picking him to win a Super Bowl right now, with one of the best defenses, one of the better offensive lines, some of the best skill position players in the NFL, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, arguably the best players at their respective positions. Kyle Shanahan, one of the best offensive minds in football. Jimmy G keeps on winning, but they beat the Packers off of special teams and defense in the playoffs. And Taylor Heinicke's kind of that same thing, man. I love Taylor Heinicke again, but you can't keep getting wrapped up in the fact that we're just winning games with them. You got to look at it objectively. If you were to place, I can name at least 15, 18 other quarterbacks in this offense. I can name 15 other quarterbacks that you would put in this offense, and we're probably NFC East favorites, or at the very least a strong playoff contender, even possibly a Super Bowl contender. But you do got to give Taylor Heinicke his credit. If he was starting and playing in that Titans game, we probably win that, and maybe a couple of other games this season instead of Carson Wentz. Maybe even the first Eagles game. You never know. So I want to give him that credit, but to go to his stats, over the course of these 5 games, his last 5 starts, but 4 of the starts are from this season. One of them goes back to last season, I believe. But over the course of those 4 wins of being 4-1 in his last 5 starts, again, he's only started 4 games this season. He has a 60% completion percentage, 202 yards passing per game, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 5 big-time throws, and 9 turnover-worthy plays. That's not really good. It's been good enough to win with the way we've been running the ball, the way our defense has been a top 5 defense in the NFL, but it's not really good. But then again, that Eagles game, it didn't feel like that. That stat line I just gave you, Taylor Heinecke his stats didn't look that good in that game either, but he played better against the Eagles objectively, and maybe there's always a chance that he could improve and get better. There's always a chance he can keep getting better. But the Taylor Heinecke I've seen so far before that Eagles game is not that good. Even though we have been winning, again, we've been winning in spite of him. Finally, against the Eagles, he contributed and played a large role in us winning the game, and I'm hoping he can continue that for the rest of the season. Now for a Chase Young update. Again, Adam Schefter tweeted out yesterday morning, Chase Young, the former number 2 overall pick in the 2020 draft, who was named NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year that season, is expected to be activated this week to play Sunday in his first game since tearing his ACL and MCL in a game against the Buccaneers last November, and a boost for the Washington defense. And objectively, for sure, Chase Young coming back can only make us better. So I'm excited, but Ron Rivera said today that they'll see how Chase Young feels tomorrow after going through everything today. It was just a walkthrough, so the challenge is finding him reps that come as close to live action as they can to see where he's at. So right now he's kind of healthy, but they don't want to throw him out there to the Wolves in the real NFL game without seeing how he handles punishment and contact and things like that. And Ron Rivera said that we won't know if Chase Young will be able to play against Houston until he goes through enough practices on Thursday and Friday. So we won't know until the end of this week, probably like Saturday, maybe even Sunday morning. And Ron Rivera also said if Chase Young does play, he's going to be on pitch count, but I even expected that. I don't expect him to go out there and play 80% of snaps, maybe like a clean 30 or 40 maybe. But remember, the Commanders are still practicing on turf. They've been practicing indoors. That's the reason he didn't play against the Eagles, one of the main reasons, because turf versus regular grass, which they play on grass outside, they practice on turf inside. With the turf, they didn't want to risk him getting hurt and re-aggravating his injury even worse, so they kind of held him back a little bit. So again, they just haven't had a chance to see if he's ready because they're scared to make him practice too much and cause a worse injury or re-aggravate it. And it's kind of the same thing this week. Today, they practice on turf, and so they don't know if Chase Young is ready. And that just goes back to my point again, that the fact that NFL owners and NFL teams and the NFL in general act like there's no difference between turf and grass, but Chase Young missed the Eagles game, and we're not even sure about him playing against the Texans, mostly because of the fact that we've been practicing on turf, and they're limiting him because they're practicing on turf, which is causing them not to be ready to play because he hasn't been able to practice enough, simply. And then Chase Young's status still to be determined, of course. He will be on a pitch count, and again, he's practicing indoors. I don't know if they're going to practice indoors all week, but today they did. We'll have to see. And then lastly, the Commanders practice report as far as do not participates. Again, it's the beginning of the week. We'll see how it goes for the rest of the week. But right now, Cole Holcomb and J.D. McKissic did not participate in practice. Tyler Larson, David Mayo, Armani Rogers, Curtis Samuel, and Logan Thomas were limited. And then in full, you had Antonio Gibson and Jonathan Williams. So our running back group is fully healthy. Tight end group getting a little better, even though we're still missing Cole Turner. Armani Rogers is limited. Logan Thomas is limited, but at least they're available. And then our linebacker group with David Mayo coming back, that's technically a little bit healthier, but Cole Holcomb still hasn't practiced. And then J.D. McKissic is still also not practicing, but I mean, he hasn't even really gotten the ball that much this year anyway. And I really would like to get him back involved. And like I said, even if we got to put him out there with Antonio Gibson on the field at the same time, and then he motions out to like the slot and becomes like a slot receiver before the ball is snapped type of thing. Just get J.D. McKissic involved in some way. He's too useful of a weapon. I know Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson can pretty much do everything between those two. They can do everything themselves. But I still want to keep J.D. McKissic involved, especially after the way that, you know, he almost signed with the Bills and decided to come back to play for us, and now he's barely playing. I feel really bad for him. I would love for him to stay involved, mostly because of that, but also because he is an actual weapon. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. As always, man, I appreciate the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose names you see scrolling on the screen right now. How do you feel about this whole Taylor Heinecke versus Carson Wentz versus Sam Howell situation? How do you feel about Taylor Heinecke? Do you feel like we're winning in spite of him, or we're winning because of him? Definitely get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about the whole situation. Do you prefer to just go ahead and rest Chase Young for the rest of this year? All of that. Catch y'all later. I'm out.